Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales, a new documentary that came out in 2022. And this focuses on Abigail Disney, who takes a look at the income disparity in America, specifically utilizing Disney itself as an example versus Bob Iger, CEO, how much this man is making versus the vast majority of people who work at Disney. This film tackles the ideas of capitalism, takes on the ideas of a lot of different things, and I feel like that's one of the biggest flaws of this, is that it's trying to throw its lasso around really big ideas and a lot of ideas, and in many ways like trickling in things like there's a whole entire documentary here that's about income disparity between people of color and different things that have been done to people of color to create that economic divide. But what this gets is like 5 minutes in a documentary focusing more on specifically Disney. And I feel like there's certain things that aren't done enough justice because it's trying to tackle all those things in this one film where there's not enough space for it. And it does those things a disservice, those ideas, those people a disservice by not really giving it enough time to really sink in and enough. This film could have been more focusing on its big idea specifically, which is that income disparity, and looking at, you have Abigail Disney getting up in front of Congress. It's interesting to thinking about how lobbyists from Disney were on both sides of the aisle drumming up attention for both sides of the aisle to attack this woman for her thoughts and ideas that, you know what, maybe CEOs should make a little less money and people that are working lower than them should make a little bit more. And it tackles that whole entire American dream idea of trickle-down economics. I think it does a really fine job of presenting that and really giving some perspective on it. And there's a lot more research to go into that, doesn't really work. And in reality, it's human nature, because just because they have the money doesn't mean they'll automatically share it with people. It's actually kind of counterintuitive to that, how most things in America work, where it's just like, that's my money, I'm not sharing it with anybody. That's how it works most of the time. And I think this documentary sheds a light on that. And, they focus in on a couple of very specific economists who are very obviously focusing on individualism, focusing on the thoughts of Ayn Rand. And, I've read her books, and on some level I am an individualist. I feel like people need to focus on themselves and make sure that they're happy and fulfilled and not to compromise on that all the time for other people. But there's also this idea of do you really need $800,000, $1 million a year, while people that work for you could barely keep things together, barely make minimum wage or below the poverty line? And that's what this film's about, when it really focuses in on it. There's a lot of other noise around it and ideas that they only dabble in, and I feel like if those were trimmed away and they really hyper-focus this, and focusing this on Disney, because, it's Abigail Disney, she knows this world, she grew up in it, and I do think some of the more powerful moments are when they do focus on actual families talking about their experiences. I think that's important, and that's pretty game-changing and eye-opening when you're listening to actual people who have dealt with these things. And I think that's an important piece that you don't want to lose out on, is losing that voice. And I think this documentary makes the time to make sure that they're honing in on that and really making that a big piece of what they're trying to say. Most documentaries, this is a persuasive documentary. It has a thesis. I think sometimes it strays too far away from its thesis, and which harms the overall argument. But in general, I think it's well told, for the most part, when it focuses in, I think it has good ideas and good arguments, and it has a lot for you to think about. And I'm sure there's definitely going to be people out there that are really pissed off about this movie. I even looked at the Rotten Tomatoes reviews and stuff like that. There definitely are. And, you know, this all came from just things that Abigail Disney said, she tweeted, and a lot of those things, if you take a step back, it's like not too unreasonable. But obviously it opens up a can of worms and really sheds a light on where our country is at in terms of these issues. And I think this documentary does a fine job of trying to flip that rock over and look what's underneath. But those are my thoughts on the American Dream and other fairy tales. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.